road, there are several tire tracks.
On which dirt road?
On all the dirt roads.
Yes,
Yeah, on all
yes.
the dirt roads. There are tire tracks.
Yes.
And you do observe on one of the roads, significant muddy area.
It was a large muddy area, yes, ma'am.
And you document that in your notes.
We document it, I believe we document it in our notes, but mainly with photographs or something like that.
And take pictures.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. It is pretty much immediately upon your arrival, you're told about the beer cans.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are able to observe those yourself.
We did.
Again, taking pictures and putting those in your notes.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And one is at the bottom of that bush along the access road.
That's
The
correct.
farmer's access road. I think that's what we've caught, right? The farmer's access
Yes,
road.
ma'am.
And that's kind of near the intersection of, I think that was Black Bottom, the intersection of that farmer's access road and Black Bottom. Is that right?
There was, the beer can bottle was kind of in a bush on the farmer's access road near Black Bottom Road. And then there was a physical beer can that was off the farmer's access road near the footpath we used to get to the victim.
Near the footpath. And again, you're told about these cigarette butts,
Yes, ma'am.
one on the access road
And one on Black Bottom.
and one on Black Bottom. And again, Agent Serencio is tasked with taking the pictures
Yes,
of those
ma'am.
items, and you're documenting it with your notes.
That's correct.
Eventually marking those areas with flags
We did.
so you can
Easily identify with the photographs.
easily identify them in the photographs and then, locate them again
Yes, ma'am.
and eventually collect them
We did.
because they could be important.
Could be.
You don't know yet.
We don't know.
Once you collect those things, once you leave the scene, you would take those back to the lab at SLED,
That is correct.
where a lab analyst, somebody else, would do the processing of those items and issue a report about any findings or lack of findings.
Yes, when we bring evidence back to the lab, we'll seal it, package it, we'll log it into it's called the Beast, but it's a LIMS system. It's an electronic chain of custody system. And we'll submit it to the laboratory and then it goes to its respective departments.
You, after doing that, you kind of eventually make your way into that wooded area,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Again, making your notes, and Agent Serencio taking photographs.
That's correct.
And as you're making your way into this wooded area, you're not just going right in and going straight to where the body is and taking pictures, right?
No, we want to make sure we're not disturbing anything between the footpath or the farmer's access road and where the victim was. So we would document that footpath with photographs and make sure we're not stepping on anything.
And you want to document that, you document that footpath
That's correct.
and along that footpath.
That is also correct.
Because from the farmer's access road, you can't see where the body is.
From my recollection, you could not see the body from the farmer's access road.
And you take pictures at the beginning of this footpath that we're talking about
We do.
and all the way through leading up to eventually where the body is.
We did.
And this wooded area there's some sticks around.
Yes, ma'am. There's bushes and briars.
Bushes, there are bigger trees,
Yes, ma'am.
and there are smaller trees, right?
Yes,
And these smaller trees have kind of branches sticking out.
it appeared that way. Yes, ma'am.
And there's vines and leaves and sticks on the ground, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And even along that footpath.
Yes, there was.
And whenever you make your way into this wooded area along the footpath, and eventually make your way to where the body is located, you observe that her feet are facing away from the dirt road. Is that right?
Her feet were towards Black Bottom Road and her head was towards the fallen tree behind her,
Okay.
if my memory.
Let's. Bank reports and documents. You said there was a fallen tree.
Yes, ma'am. You could see the roots underneath it.
You could see that from the road?
I think if you got down closer to the fire break, you could see that there was a tree laying down, and she would have been on the other side of that towards Black Bottom Road.
Here, but let's see if this will help remember. I'm going to show you what's previously been, and that is States Exhibit 106 and States Exhibit 42, and see if that helps you remember where her feet were. If you can tell from those pictures.
Sorry about this. Looking through the woods can.
Yeah, can you do a little story? I'll show you States Exhibit 141, see if that helps.
Yes, ma'am. This one does.
Okay.
So her feet were towards. I apologize. Her feet were towards the fallen tree, and her head was towards the farmer's access road. I believe that's right.
And again, you are, because we may have to refer back to these photographs later, you want to take a lot of photographs.
Correct.
And you want to, again, take notes.
Yes, ma'am.
Because sometimes when you end up in a situation like this, it's years later, you need to be able to remember.
That's correct.
And you observe that she's laid on her back.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you take note of her clothing.
We do.
It is pulled up somewhat on her body.
So her shirt was pulled up. I believe her bralette and her bra was somewhat pulled up on the left side. And there was a drawstring that was extended out over her head on the ground.
And that's all above, the drawstring's above her head.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay.
In States Exhibit 42, you can see it pretty good.
And again, those clothes kind of pulled up on her body.
Yes, the shirt was pulled up, and this didn't seem to sit right on the left side of her body, and then the drawstring came up above her head.
And that foot path we're talking about in relation to where the top part of her body is?
The footpath would have been this direction over here.
And we're talking about her clothing. You document what she's wearing.
We do.
What it looks like.
Yes, ma'am. Colors.
The condition that it's in.
We do.
How it's situated on her body.
Yes, ma'am.
You talk about her shoes.
We do.
That you observe they're broken.
We do.
They're still strapped on her feet.
They were strapped around her ankles.
On her
not
ankles.
Yes,
Yes, thank you. Then you also notice that she only has one earring.
that is correct.
And you end up trying to locate that one in that area later on.
We did.
You don't find it.
We did not.
Okay. And you document, you told us how her hands were, how they were positioned
We did.
as you saw them, how her legs were positioned.
That's correct.
And you make a note that you observe what you believe is suspected blood.
Yes, ma'am.
And you told us yesterday, you use that word suspected because you don't know until you test it.
We don't test it, and I don't like to assume
Right.
anything on scene.
And you also note and told us yesterday about striations.
Yes, ma'am.
And those are scratch-like injuries, right? Or scratch-like marks on the body.
It is something that has come in contact with the arm that has removed what the suspected blood and the dirt that was in the location. It appears something had come in contact after the blood was there and removed it from the body.
And you note that it's on the this is my right, on the right shoulder area, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And on her kind of in this area here.
The bicep, tricep area, yes, ma'am.
And then eventually the Clarendon County coroner is there on scene.
Yes, ma'am.
And he helps kind of roll the body on the side, right? On her
He
side.
does.
And he's wearing gloves at that time.
Yes, I believe
Yes.
for the most part, the coroners are really good about maintaining personal protective equipment
Again, because you don't want to put yourself
on the
in
body.
that scene.
That's
Yes.
correct.
And then when he does roll her, that's when you observe more of those striations.
On her lower back above her pants.
And
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
on her lower back. And you told us yesterday, in your opinion and with your training, you believe that's consistent with being dragged.
Based on the location where she was, the position of the clothing, the striations, there was no blood around her. Everything kind of added up to it appeared that she had been dragged.
And that's consistent with the way the wooded area appears too.
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
That footpath that we've
Yeah.
talked about.
There's brush and briars and undergrowth that could have done that.
This isn't a smooth area on the ground.
No, ma'am,
There are lots of things on the ground.
that's true.
And again, in your report, you talk about these suspected stab wounds.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, you don't know that they are actually stab wounds at that point.
No, I let the doctor at autopsy determine what is and what isn't.
But you, in your notes, go ahead and make a note of everywhere that you see the
General
suspected
locations,
Yep.
yes, I note general locations where the suspected stab wounds are that we could observe.
And you noted suspected stab wounds to her head,
Yes, ma'am.
suspected stab wounds to her right shoulder,
Yes, ma'am.
to her right hand,
Yes.
to her neck,
I'm not sure what side of the neck, but yes, the neck was notated.
and her back,
That's correct.
and her right foot.
That is correct.
And it's not just one suspected stab wound in each of those areas, right? Just like you said,
Correct.
it's more of the general area of where you observed some
One
wounds.
or some. I did not list what, because sometimes some that look like stab wounds at autopsy, they may determine to not be. So that's why I say suspected.
General area,
General area.
and you give in your notes the general area.
General area, yes.
And you notice that some of her fingernails look to be broken.
They didn't, yes, ma'am.
And again, that may be important.
Maybe.
So you document that.
Mhm.
Agent Serencio
Serencio, yes, ma'am.
takes photos and you take notes.
Yes, ma'am. We did.
And before she's even taken away, because that could be important, you want to, and before she's even moved, you want to get the fingernail scrapings.
I believe we did them before she was moved.
Because she is eventually moved to a stretcher
That is correct.
and taken away by the coroner's office.
That's correct.
And so before she's moved and taken away, you get those fingernail scrapings.
That's correct. I don't want any contamination of if we're moving the scene.
You go ahead and get fingerprints too at that time.
We did.
And you go ahead and collect, we've heard a lot about swabs, but it's like a Q-tip.
Yes, ma'am.
You swab the inside of her mouth,
Yes, ma'am. A buccal swab.
a buccal swab. And that's to collect DNA.
So we have her known standard. So if there's any other DNA that comes up in the case, we can say what is and what isn't hers. Or the scientist can.
And at that point, maybe for identification purposes.
Usually with it could be used for identification. A lot of the times we use the fingerprints as identification.
You also collect several hairs from her body.
We did.
And they're in different areas of her body.
Yes, ma'am.
You got one from her left hand,
That is correct.
right? 3 from her right hand,
That is correct.
and 1 hair from what you've noted as the crotch area of her pants.
That is correct.
And you're careful when you collect them.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, you've got gloves because you don't want to manipulate or contaminate any potential evidence.
That is correct.
Because again, you don't know what's important, what's not important.
That is correct.
You also told the jury yesterday about this alternate light source.
Yes, ma'am.
And that different, what was it, wavelength
That's
or,
correct.
yeah, so that you can see things that maybe you wouldn't be able to see just with your eyeballs.
That's correct. So with bruising, eventually the bruising will come out to where you can see it with the naked eye. But with alternate light source, it kind of lets you see before that, because a bruise can take a couple days to come to the surface. So by using the ALS or the alternate light source, it lets us document beforehand how she was. So you may not be able to see the bruise in the normal photographs, but with the ALS, you'd be able to see the bruising.
And you did see bruises in multiple areas on her body.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's gotten quite dark at this point in your time out there. You spend several hours out there.
I think we spent approximately 6 hours out there.
And by the time you're finished, it's completely dark.
That is correct. It was midnight when we left.
It's after midnight.
Yes, ma'am.
And there aren't any, this is a dirt road, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Out, I think we've heard it's more, for farming and hunting, things like that.
Yes, ma'am.
There are no street lights.
No.
Completely dark.
Besides flashlights and truck lights,
Right.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. So from there, at the scene in Clarendon County, you could take those items, you take them back to the lab at SLED.
That is correct.
While there, you get a call about this car on Saluda Avenue.
No, ma'am, we'd actually left to lab
Okay.
and we were on our way home.
Then just 3 hours later, you got to come back.
Yes, ma'am.
And this time it's to process a car.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
This car is on Saluda Avenue in Columbia.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Same, your partner went with you.
That is correct.
That was Agent Sorencio.
Yep.
You get there around 3:30.
We got on scene. We got the call at 3:01. We got on scene at 3:26.
And again, still dark at this point.
Yes, ma'am, I believe it was.
A little brighter there because you're in the city.
And I believe there were street lights.
And
yes, ma'am.
and headlights and those things. And again, the task is to document that scene
That's correct.
as you find it at that point.
That's correct.
And Agent Sorencio is tasked with the photos again,
Yes, ma'am.
and you're tasked with taking notes.
That is correct.
And you noted that the child lock was engaged
Yes, ma'am.
on the car. Did you ask any of the officers on the scene about that when
I
you
did
got
not.
there? Didn't ask any officers. You observe a child seat. There's a car seat in the back, like a booster seat.
Yes, ma'am, there was.
And eventually, in kind of investigating a little bit more on this, you review an owner's manual.
Later on, it was much after. Yes, ma'am.
And that was it an owner's manual for a 2017 Chevy Impala?
I Googled it. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay. And the manual tells you that just a one button
From what I remember, yes, ma'am.
that you can push on or push off,
That is correct.
and that pushing it on engages the locks, but also the windows
That is correct.
to where the back seat would not be able to operate those controls.
That's correct.
At that point, while you're on Saluda Avenue, you collect a few things, but you don't collect everything from the car.
That's correct.
But because you want to get the car documented as it is right there, but you want to get it back to a more secure location.
More secure with better lighting.
Better lighting, not in the middle of a street,
Correct.
not in the middle of the night.
Correct.
You want to have a better situation where you can really spend some time with this car and fully examine it.
That is correct.
At some point, Agent Sorencio, she gets called away, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're tasked with finishing up the documentation through photos.
I believe I took photographs once she left, but I don't remember off the top of my head if I did.
Okay. And yesterday you told the jury that the car is eventually towed to the Columbia Police Department.
At 715 Bluff, I believe it's Bluff Road. Yes, ma'am.
715 Bluff Road. And you tell the tow driver to wear gloves.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's again, because you want to preserve that scene as it is.
Correct. And I don't remember if the tow truck driver had to physically get in the vehicle or if he was able to hook it up from underneath to tow it up.
So it's later that same morning that you get back to that vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's still secured at Columbia Police Department.
It was.
And by secured, we mean behind.
It was inside the facility, and it was also inside of a small gate area.
And you had collected the keys to that car while at Saluda Avenue.
That is correct.
And you, along with Agent Serencio, you guys get back to doing what you're tasked to do, right? Taking photos, making notes.
Pretty much, yes, ma'am.
And it gets a little more involved because at this point you are swabbing more things.
That is correct.
You swab the steering wheel.
We did.
You swab the gear shift.
We did.
You swab the door handles. The rear passenger door handle.
Yes. Sorry. Before we did that, we did the fingerprints.
Yeah, you also lift prints from the vehicle, from the car. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then eventually collecting other things from the car.
That is correct.
And we went through all of those things yesterday. So,
We did.
and again, while you're working on the car, same day, you're wearing gloves.
Yes.
You're not wearing the same gloves you were wearing that morning.
No, we change gloves very often.
You're not wearing the same gloves you were wearing out in Clarendon County.
That is correct.
It's important to change your gloves frequently.
Correct.
You've touched a lot of things.
Mhm.
And again, you're wanting to be careful not to manipulate any evidence,
Correct.
contaminate any evidence.
That is correct.
Because again, you don't know what could be important, what might not be important.
That's correct.
And because we've seen kind of how when you collect things, how everything's packaged.
Everything is packaged separately so that it maintains the integrity of the item of evidence.
And when you do package it, you indicated you write the time and the day in which you collected it and put your initials on it.
That's correct.
And then you use this kind of seal tape, right, to seal
Yes,
it
ma'am.
up.
That's correct.
So that the next person that ends up with this item knows it's in the condition it was when you collected it.
Correct.
And then it's been sealed, nobody's touched it.
Correct.
And then once that person opens it, they would put their initials here, make a note somewhere about that.
I'm sure they would. I'm not sure how the rest of the lab. Pretty much once we submit the evidence, that's
That's outside of your,
realm. Yes,
it's
ma'am.
on to somebody else.
Yes, ma'am.
Because what your job entails is to be observant, right?
Yes, ma'am.
To be thorough,
Yes, ma'am.
to gather as much information as possible.
We try. Yes, ma'am.
And then you turn that information over to the investigators in the case.
The investigators and then the evidence to the lab.
Yep. And then, and to the people in the lab.
Correct.
And from there, that's where their work begins.
Yes, ma'am.
And your work kind of ends.
Besides writing the report and follow-ups, yes, ma'am.
Like the court's involved. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Lieutenant, good morning.
Good morning.
There were some questions about the striations, and you have told this jury that you think it's possible that Samantha was dragged to that spot, but you can't say for sure.
I can't say for sure, but yes, sir.
But the markings that you just,
It's leading.
Objections overruled.
the markings that were on her arm, I believe you testified, are consistent with that possibility. Is that right?
They are, yes, sir.
Okay. And then can you tell the jury again one more time about the nature of her clothes as they were found and how that fits with what we're talking about?
Yes, sir. State's Exhibit 42. With her clothing being pulled up over her head and this drawstring being up over her head, along with her positioning and then the striations, it's just, and then being in the middle of the woods, there's no suspected blood around her to indicate that this is where the incident happened. and there is no blood trail to indicate that she ran to this spot. So to me, it appeared that someone had to put her here.
Can you say with any degree of certainty whether that was one person, 2 people, 3 people, 7 people, anything like that?
No, sir, I don't think I can.
There was a lot of questioning about what your role is, and not just in this crime scene, but any crime scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were asked about how you gather as much information as possible, right?
We try.
Is it fair to say that sometimes the evidence that you collect ends up being relevant to an investigation?
Sometimes it does, yes, sir.
Sometimes it ends up being valuable to an investigation. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
At the same time, does some of that information end up being, or some of that evidence that's collected end up being irrelevant?
That also happens.
Does it sometimes end up being not valuable?
That's true, yes.
All right. But regardless of whether at the time you collect it, whether you know that or not, you get it, you lock it up, and you submit it into the secure evidence facility at Slade, correct?
We do.
On these cases, not just this case, but any case, when you do that, when you submit evidence like that, do you oftentimes make yourself aware of whether any items are tested or not?
Not normally, sir.
Okay. So you don't even know if things get tested or not?
No, we submit things and then pretty much we're on to the next case.
Okay. And have there been cases in your career where you have taken it upon yourself to find out what happened to a particular item that you collected, whether it was tested or what the results were?
Yes, and sometimes questions come up about certain items later by the forensic folks, or the forensic scientists, excuse me, and we'll do what we can to answer questions they have about location and whatnot of where the evidence came from on the scene. So sometimes we do have a little bit of correspondence with the scientists.
Okay. And when you have that correspondence, have you also been made aware during those whether things have not been tested?
I don't remember. No, I'm not sure, sir. Sometimes I'm sure I've been told in the past, but I can't say it for sure.
Generally speaking.
I'm sure I have in the past.
Okay. If you had to say, no, this is going to be tough, approximately, how many items of evidence, single items of evidence, have you collected in your 7.5 years at Slade?
Thousands.
Thousands. Do you know if every one of those thousands has been analyzed?
I would highly doubt it.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, sir.
Call your next witness.
State called Oshimer Williams.
Please, Madam Clerk, put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right.
Do you swear or affirm that testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state your full name for the record, and please spell your first name.
Okay.
Oceanmark Diane Williams.
And you can take your mask off if you're okay with that. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
All right.
Mr. Williams, where do you work?
State City. I own a store,
You own the store?
a cell phone store.
And can you tell the jury what is Cellular City?
I fix and repair cell phones
And
and computers and things like that, and consoles.
you talk really fast, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To slow down a little bit. So you said you sell and repair phones?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you do anything else in the store?
Computers, game consoles, basically like a break and fix, you know.
And how long have you had the store?
This is gonna be my 11th year next month.
So did you own, and where is the store located?
4604 Monticello Road.
So what side of town? Is that in Columbia?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that store owned and operated by you back in March of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm just going to bring you straight to this case. Were you working in your store on March 29th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
What time does your store open?
10 o'clock, but normally sometimes I'm there at 9.
And do you remember on that day what time you opened the store?
I don't remember.
But usually it's open around what time?
Usually around 9.
And are you the person that opens the store?
Yes, ma'am. Or I usually have an employee, but I open the store that day.
And I'm going to show you some photographs.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you. And show you what's been marked as States Exhibits 303 through 314.
Okay.
Ask you to look at those and see if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am. Just as
You're
back
gonna
up.
look through all of them first for me, and then tell me if you recognize all of them before you tell me what they are.
Yes, ma'am.
And what are they pictures? Are they pictures of your store and
Yes,
different
ma'am.
parts of your store?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the store as it looked back in March and April of 2019?
Yes, ma'am. Kind of disorganized, but yeah.
What did you say?
Disorganized in the back. So.
At this time, Your Honor, we'd ask to introduce States Exhibit 303 through 314 into evidence.
No objection. There it is.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Mr. Wentz, I'm going to start, and I'm going to have you, can you tell the jury what States Exhibit number 314 shows?
That's the front of my store.
And is that how it looked back in March of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's the front door?
Yes, ma'am. Right in the center.
Right, all right. And what does States Exhibit 313 show you?
That's my camera that points to the left side.
How many cameras did you have in the store?
15.
Why'd you have so many cameras?
Because I've had break-ins and stuff before.
And I'll go through the rest in a minute. I just want to ask you some more questions. So you said you had some break-ins, that's why you have so many cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
Were those cameras active and working on March 29th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
So you stated you opened your store. What do you do when you first open the store?
Go and check the store, make sure there's no break-ins. go through inventory, make sure I count all the money and everything else, and get ready to start my day. Make sure I order all the supplies.
Everything fine that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
What, if anything, happened that involves this case?
Say that one more time.
What, if anything, occurred that involved this case? Who came into your store?
That morning, I mean, normal, people come and go, and I remember, someone tried to sell me a phone that morning.
And I want to talk to you about the selling of that phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember what the person was wearing when they came into your store?
Yes, ma'am. I want to say he had a black hoodie on.
And
It says a black hoodie.
And is there video of that
Yes, ma'am.
coming in? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I stopped you. You said he tried to sell you a phone. Do you remember roughly what time this was?
It was early. I want to say maybe before 11 o'clock. I know that.
All right. And so he came to the store. What happened? What occurred?
I know I was helping. No, I remember him coming in, and he had it was an iPhone 7 Plus. I remember, and he brought the phone in the store. I think when the phone was dead at that time, and I was checking it out, it didn't have a SIM tray in it.
What's a SIM tray?
That's the actual thing that holds a SIM card.
So what did you do because it didn't have a SIM tray?
I plug it up to, to try to find it, because it has a serial number and everything,
Okay, I'm gonna stop you. You plug it into what?
into my computer.
And why do you do that?
Because you have to, anytime I buy anything, I have to have the serial number.
Why?
Because I have to record it just in case anything happens.
So how do you find the serial number?
I plug it up to my computer, and I have a tool that I use, and it pulls up the serial number for the actual phone
And do you do that every time
every time.
And were you able to do that with this phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did the phone come back as stolen or anything?
No, ma'am. It came back in that picture that you had. It comes up and says, find my iPhone, which is on, which something that happens because sometimes the user hasn't signed out of the iCloud before they sell it, but it displays the serial number, and I record them all the time.
And I'm going to show you States Exhibit 310 and 311. Are these what you were talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically in 311, what does it show?
That's the serial number of the phone, and where it says find my iPhone. Yes, that's what it says. Is the iCloud signed in?
So right there.
Yes, ma'am.
And that signifies to you what?
That the iCloud is signed on to the phone, so the user ID is still signed on to the phone.
So you were able to determine what does the serial number entail for you? What does that mean?
What kind of phone it is, the carrier, and everything else, if it's lost or stolen.
And so what did you do after you looked at and were able to get the number?
I looked at the serial number, charged the phone up, and the phone came on, and we tried to, I negotiate to try to get a price on it. So me and him, we couldn't come to agreement. We kind of went back and forth for probably about 20, 30 minutes or whatever, because he was back and forth, in and out the car, and we couldn't come to agreement, and he took the phone and left.
Do you remember how much he wanted for the phone?
$300.
Is that a normal price you would pay for the phone?
No, that's too much.
Why?
Because I have a family I have to feed. So, the lower the price, the better, the profit is. I want to say I offer him like 150, 125 for the phone, something like that.
And did he take that?
No, ma'am.
So what happened with the phone?
I gave the phone back to him.
And when you plug the phone on, are you able to see who owns the phone or just that serial number?
I can see the serial number. And I want to say that there wasn't a password on the phone.
What do you mean by password?
When every user has a phone and they can put a password on to lock the phone, but there was no password on the phone.
And is it often called a passcode as well?
Yes, ma'am.
This one was not. Was it locked or unlocked?
It was unlocked.
Is the serial number the same as that IMEI number?
It is the same thing. It's just the serial number it's like a decoder. The serial number and IMEI is the same thing, but it's just two different sets of numbers.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 302 for ID.
Okay.
I'm going to ask if you recognize that.
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
This is the video from my store.
And how do you know it's the video from your store?
I watched it.
And what did you put on it so you would know that?
My initials and my initials and the date on it.
And does this fairly and accurately depict the video that was done and made on March 29th of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, we'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit 302 into evidence, Your Honor.
Objection, Your Honor.
It may oppose, Your Honor.
Yes.
So is this you?
Yes, ma'am.
And so this, what angle is this from?
This is, I have an overhead view, above that covers the cash register and everything that goes on the counter.
Okay. And so what are you doing in here?
What am I doing now?
Yes, sir. Just working?
Yes, ma'am, it's working normal.
And I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. And is this you continuing to work?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what are you doing here?
That's the phone plugged up to the computer.
And so what are you doing?
Waiting for it to come on.
So what are you doing there?
Going through the phone itself, probably getting the serial number.
Okay, and is that normally how the procedure
Yes.
works?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, everything that comes in my store, I have to record the serial number.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop this one for a
Yeah.
moment.
And that's me going through it, as you see, I'm trying to.
Okay. I'm gonna bring up another angle. So where is this in reference to your store? Where are you?
I'm behind, you can't see my desk, but I'm behind, that's pointing at the front door.
So this is what is this here?
That's the front door that everybody comes in and out.
Okay. I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit again. Who's that?
And, I don't know what his name is, but yeah,
Is this who is this that brought in relation to the phone?
that's the guy that tried to sell me the phone.
And what is he wearing?
A hoodie and I guess a hat, or it's a skull cap. Can't see, it's a glare from here.
Okay. And you said you think it's a skull cap though?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this how he appeared to you back in March of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
2019? And this is, the date and time is on here. Is that the correct date and time?
No, ma'am, the camera, it's kind of squirrely sometimes, but I think I'm pretty sure the date is right, but I don't know about the time.
The time could be off,
Yes, ma'am.
but that is the correct date.
Yes, ma'am.
He goes off camera a little bit. Where is he in relation to you at this point?
Because it's a camera like above the counter, so that's that view. It should, you might have another one that's a direct shot too. I don't know if y'all have that one.
We do. I just am asking where he goes off camera. Is he like out of the store? Or?
No, ma'am. No, he's still in the store.
All right.
He's not got the store until you walk out that front door.
Okay. I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit again. Still the same guy?
Yes, ma'am.
Still wearing the thing on his head?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it a quick process to check that phone or does it take a few minutes?
It depends on the phone. Normally about 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, 'cause I have to go through and make sure everything is, everything is clean before I can purchase it.
Okay. And that's the normal procedure?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna speed it up a little. Still in the store,
Yes, ma'am.
so it does take a few minutes, would that be fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And does he have a phone?
I don't recall that now. All I remember, he was in and out to the car. I know that, I remember that, like yesterday.
Again, I know I'm skipping around, I'm just
Yes,
trying
ma'am.
not to waste everybody's time. Still going through?
Yes, ma'am.
Fair to say he's in your store for a few minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Now he's gotten closer, what are y'all doing now?
I'm still going through the phone.
And I'm just again gonna speed it up. Still just waiting for the
Yes,
phone?
ma'am.
to finish?
Yes, ma'am.
So we see him leaving here. Do you have to let him out or can the people just go in and out?
They go in and out as they please.
And there's another customer in the store, is that typical?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna go to the next clip. So where's this camera located?
That's right above the door, pointing back at the front counter. You should see me right there.
Basically, similar angle that's reflected in State's Exhibit 309.
Yes, ma'am. Same.
And this is you located here.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, so I'm gonna speed up just a little. Is that the same person?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, what are you all doing?
Seeing going through the phone. I'll probably wait for the phone to power up or the diagnostic to come back.
And while we're waiting, did you see him drive up?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of car did he drive?
It was a black car, black Impala.
How did you know that it had pulled up?
No, well, I have cameras in the back of my store. I mean, well, I got the big screen. I can see who comes up, and I park directly in front. So I remember the car whipping in and parking on my right side.
So his car parked next to your car,
Yes, ma'am.
and it was a black Chevy Impala?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else get out of the car?
I didn't see anybody get out the car. It was only him.
So again, I'm just gonna fast forward. That's him kind of walking around, looking around.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna speed it along. So is he doing anything with his hands?
Well, you see, I think a phone in his hand now.
That's
Yeah,
not the
that's a
phone. That's not the phone you're working on, is it?
No, the other phone's still behind the counter.
Okay. I'm just gonna speed it up a little. And is this gentleman involved in this case at all?
No, he's just a cousin. Me and him talk all the time and everything. He stops by, we talk.
You said he's a customer.
Yes.
Is there something else people can do at your store besides buy phones?
I mean, I buy and sell, but no.
Can they pay their phone bill or?
Yeah, pay the phone bill, yes. I'm sorry.
Is he one of the customers that does that?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, normally he just comes when we just talk. He's an older guy, retired from the railroad, and we just be talking about life, you know.
And so he is still standing here, the person that sold you the phone,
Yes,
or
ma'am.
tried to sell you the phone? And what are you doing?
Still probably going through diagnostics on the phone, or going through the phone doing something I can't really see. but
Okay, that's fine. I'm just, in general, what are you doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Still in your store?
Yes, ma'am.
Still waiting?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's probably run a report, because sometimes they take a little bit long time to come back.
You
So
say we're running a report. What's the report?
basically, what I do, once I get the serial number, I'm sorry. Once I get the serial number of it, I have a tool that I use to run back and see if the phone is actually lost or stolen. And I ran it and it came back clean, which is not reported lost or stolen.
So that's the report you mean? when you say
Yes,
report.
ma'am.
And is that a quick process or does it take time?
It depends on how the server's responding. So maybe that day was running really slow.
Is it anything you can control the speed of?
No. Yeah, I just put it in the database and I just wait for it to come back.
Still? Oh, and so now
Yeah,
it's going.
that's the other customer.
And so there are several, I'm not gonna go through all the other camera angles, but there are 2 other camera angles, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you provide these to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
Have any problems with doing that?
At first, no, when they came and he did what he did and go.
I mean, did you have any problems giving it to them?
No.
And did they do anything or ask you for anything else?
My DNA,
Did you have any problems with them taking your DNA?
no, ma'am.
They reported it. And Mr. Williams, what, if anything, did you see on the phone once you turned it on? Did you see anything?
When I turned it on, I didn't see anything, but sometimes I just scroll through, kind of seeing what's going on. I remember, I can always look at the iCloud name and everything else.
Did
Yes,
you
ma'am.
recognize a name or see a name?
I want to say I did see a name, but I think I remember seeing a picture.
What picture did you see?
I want to say, I know it was a Caucasian female, and I want to say it was a Christmas picture, maybe. Yeah, I was concerned it was a Christmas picture. I mean, it was black and white or red or something like that.
Do you see the person who tried to sell you the phone in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is he?
Yeah, right there.
What does he have on?
The blue shirt, tie.
Please let the record reflect that he has identified the defendant, Your Honor.
It does.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Briefly, Your Honor, thank you. May I please report? Mr. Rowland, how are you doing today?
All right.
Good, good. I just have really quick questions. Permission to first witness, Your Honor? I would like you to please point out to the jurors, if you could in these photos, where your cameras are located.
This camera is in the top left corner.
Okay, can we see any other cameras in this photo?
There's one right here. There's one right here. There's one right here, and there's another one right there.
So right around your workstation.
Yes.
Look-
Well, and this is facing the front door.
Okay, and we can go through some other photos just to kind of, do you see any cameras in this photo?
No, this right here is the back of the store where I actually monitor.
Okay, so that shows all the camera angles.
Yeah, this is
in the
what.
store.
Mhm.
Okay, and where is this camera located?
This one is pointing, like I sit here. It's a camera right behind you, so I can look
Okay.
directly at you.
And it looks like this one is that right in the front of the store looking,
This is right here at the top right corner. Like you're about to walk out the door, you look in
so
the
when
top right
customers
corner.
are speaking with you, we're seeing their back?
Yes,
Okay. And that's the same camera that we just spoke about?
yes. Mhm.
Okay. How about this camera?
This camera's in the top left-hand corner. So if you're standing looking at me, top left.
Okay. And safe to say this camera is behind you?
That's the one, that's this camera. This one.
Same one? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. And this last one?
This camera is in the top right corner.
Okay,
That's facing this way. So I got them kind of crossed. So
okay,
you can
got
see
every
everything.
angle?
Yes.
Sure. All right, and a moment ago, you mentioned that you're having some issues with your cameras as far as, not the date, you said the date was right, correct?
Right.
But the time.
Yeah, the time.
Do you know if all of your cameras, while the time might be displayed incorrectly, are the cameras synced? Is the time synced throughout all the cameras? Like, will all the
Yeah.
cameras say it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock?
They should be because they're on the same DVR.
Okay,
Yes, it's all one DVR, so it all comes on one unit.
okay. One moment, beg your first indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Okay.
Anything further?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. May step down.
May we approach, Your Honor, very briefly?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're having to go to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case
My name is Roberta Thornsberry, Thornsberry.
Good afternoon, Ms. Salisbury.
Afternoon.